Hello and welcome to Tavern Chat, the daily vidcast podcast of gaming, old school gaming, D&D related news, articles, and such. So today we're going to touch on Dungeons, which really covers what? Like every fancy RPG, but even goes beyond that. But Joe the Lawyer and myself, we discussed Dungeons a bit on Friday night's live stream. We were doing Iron Reactions, it's every other Friday night. And we were talking about dungeons and the idea that dungeons are getting smaller as combats have gotten longer, as editions have gotten a bit more complicated when it comes to combat options. And therefore, you're going to explore less in the same amount of real world game time, so you don't need as many rooms to explore. So it was just, we were working on that. So we actually got a voicemail. The voicemail is from Jason Rocky Gardner. He's half of the Silver Bullet publishing team. The other half is Ian McCartney. Great stuff. If you see it for sale, snag it. Especially if you're old school gamers, because it's really old school gamer related. If you're 5e, I don't know if it's gonna strike your fancy. But Rocky called with some comments about dungeons, and at the same time, right before I came onto this podcast, I talked briefly about this via Discord chat with none other than Greg Christopher, who I've known for years, and Greg is a game designer, and he had some ideas about dungeons too, so I might delve into a bit of that. But first, let's go to Rocky. Of course, because my son just called.
It's Rocky. I just got done listening to you guys talking about where all the dungeons went.
So it wasn't so much where all the dungeons went, but how they're getting smaller, how they're getting more compact. And by the way, I turned the volume off because my son called right as I was starting this before. So best laid plans. But in any case, yes. And
I think they're still out there. I know of at least 3 Mega Dungeons in 5th edition right now.
And that's something like almost like an oxymoron, because a Mega Dungeon in 5th edition, see, one of the aspects of a Mega Dungeon that always confused me was how to keep it level appropriate, right? If it's a Mega Dungeon, how do you make sure that your party is level appropriate for where they're going? Now, with old school gaming, level appropriate is, oh shit, you've come across something that's going to kick your ass, time to back off, right? But new editions are the assumption that things are going to be level balanced for the players, for the PCs. So that, for 5th edition Mega Dungeons, I'd love to hear some feedback on how you actually balanced it out.
Undermountain just got redone by Wizards.
I had no idea. And I'll be honest with you, Undermountain had these worthless maps that were poster sized, but and they were really small squares. But you know what? You couldn't put it on your gaming table, right? So it was something that just was not usable in my experience. I'm sure others can say different.
Last year, maybe the year before, Rapinathic by Frog God.
And Rapinathic came out for 5e. Beautiful job done. And they had to rebalance it, my understanding is, from the Pathfinder and Swords and Wizardry versions. Again, beautiful book, full color. Love it.
And the Grand Temple of Jing.
Grand Temple of Jing is something that I think there's been, oh my God, how many different editions, printings of this thing? I have to go back onto my own blog, because I know I did blog posts about this back in the day. I think I actually had some prior version of it. God only knows.
This came out from Kickstarter. Literally, I got my copy about 2 weeks ago. So the big dungeons are still out there. Little dungeons, they never go away, right?
And a little dungeon is, and where do you draw the line of it's a dungeon as opposed to just a lair? Right? And I know this is kind of splitting hairs, but I always see a dungeon as having a certain size and a lair and a tomb. It's small. Now that coming from me, I, as a DM, prefer my dungeon levels or my uh, tombs or whatever on the smaller side, usually like 5 to 8 rooms, because I like stuff that can be wrapped up in a single night of adventuring. At the same time, I love mega dungeons, but I just don't like designing them. So when I'm designing, I go small. When I'm reading, I like to go big.
We call them layers, we call them different names, but they're always still there. And I think that largely the definition of dungeon is a little too specific.
All right, well, it could be. I'll grant you that, Rocky. But again, you're a bit more of a designer than I am, so let's hear your take on it.
I think a dungeon should be anything with connecting rooms, 4, 5, or more, with something at the end to acquire.
All right, so yeah, but then it's like reading a tomb. Like you're gonna go into this tomb of Lord Schmuckenoff because Lord Schmuckenoff got buried with their scepter, and either it's valuable or it's got supposed magical powers. Does that make it a dungeon if there's, I don't know, 4 rooms total? I don't know. Again, defining it is hard. But I will say I do believe they've gotten smaller.
I think that's the best definition for a dungeon. I don't think it matters if it's in a forest with 5 different clearings.
Now, that's interesting because Rocky's saying it could be a dungeon. Well, you know what? And this goes back to what Greg Christopher was talking to me about. He was talking that dungeons are great because as a GM, they give you sessions worth of adventuring for your party. And you only have to, you can read it and know it, and you don't have to always be on top of things. Your party's more focused. But when you play a sci-fi game, you kind of lose out on that, right? On a sci-fi game, it's almost like the universe is the sandbox. However, and I'm going to put this out there, Hoax and Horrors Basic Black Edition from Bedroom Wall Press. You can get it at Drive-Thru RPG, Hoax and Horrors. It's pay what you want in PDF, but it's also pay what you want for the softcover. I got the softcover somewhere. I'd have to dig it out or just buy a new one. I don't think it was pay what you want when I got it, but I remember being impressed with it. And now, what is the great thing about Hoax and Horrors? We're not alone in the universe, but we have few friends. As we emerged on the galactic stage, we found a universe stripped bare of sentient life by a great plague, leaving only the wild beasts and twisted plague horrors, wandering the ruined hulks of lost civilizations. We are the surveyors. We explore the uncharted sectors of space and hunt these ruins for the treasures they contain and the riches they might bring to what sentient life remains. We are not brave, merely foolhardy and desperate. Those who survive become rich beyond dreams. Very few survive. Hoax and Horrors is a science fiction role-playing game of galactic exploration and adventure for 2 or more players. Now, what does that do for you? What does that say? Well, to me, that's basically saying, here's a science fiction game, and yes, you're in space, but basically a dungeon crawl, right? And I like the way they handle it. So I got to go back and read it because there are times you want to do science fiction, and at the same time, you don't necessarily want your players to go in all different directions, and you don't want to put them on rails either. And dungeons are self-contained areas that aren't railed, but they're certainly walled, right? That's part of the advantage as a GM when you run a dungeon. You kind of know what your party's exploration is limited to.
A puzzle in one, a quote-unquote trap in another, a hangman tree in one. That's still a dungeon. It's just outside. Same with a temple or a mega dungeon. Those are my thoughts. I'll talk to you soon.
Well, thank you, Rocky. And again, your thoughts got me to explore a bit more on my thoughts. And again, yes, the dungeon is a nebulous term. So maybe I should have said that maybe it's more game design of the later editions downplays the number of combat encounters because combat encounters run longer in general than ones of earlier editions. And certainly things like Swords and Wizardry or Labyrinth Lord will run quicker than Pathfinder or 5e. But, there you go. All right, folks, we're still in the midst of the world of the pandemic. We're also in the midst of very bad allergy seasons. My nose is itchy and snotty. But with the pandemic, I'm not a medical professional. I'm going to say use your common sense to keep yourself, your friends, your family, your community, your loved ones healthy and safe. Be safe, be well, God bless. Roll those dice. For those watching at home, please subscribe. Hit that subscribe button and the like button and leave a comment. Leave a voicemail, 347-509-5168. Or if you are listening on Anchor, you can always use the Anchor app to leave a voicemail. I listen to them all. I try to get just about damn near every one of them up on the air because they make it better. They really do. All right, folks. On that note, I'm out of here. Knock on the wood underneath my desk covering. But I'll see you all tomorrow. Later.